Tupac's cousin did an Art of the Dialogue interview. And in this interview, he's calling out Fat Joe for telling a cap story about Tupac. Now, Fat Joe being called out for cap stories ain't new. Like, Fat Joe literally has the wildest stories. I know one story in particular, like the internet collectively came together and called cap on, was when Fat Joe told a story about how this Ecuadorian kid, when he was like in his teens, this Ecuadorian kid tried to smoke him 8 times in 2 days.
There's a story about an Ecuadorian kid
Yeah.
who tried to air me out 8 times in 2 days. This really happened, Shady. This guy was like,
The face of his homie that he's telling the story to tells it all, bruh. He's looking at Fat Joe like, Joe, really, bruh? You gonna lie to me like this, bruh? Joe, not again, Joe. We were having a great conversation, bro. You don't need to do this, Joe.
and for no reason. He shot up my whole rental. We was in there. I hear the block going, oh my God, they killed Joey and Tony. Then we get up, it's bullets.
Yeah.
This man here, he had me shook.
Yeah.
I couldn't get a drop on him. I went to his block,
Yeah.
seen him on the corner. We 3 deep. The rustiest guns you ever see. We about to jump out and get him. This guy's in the middle of the street.
I'm not saying Fat Joe a liar because I wasn't there. But when your homie turns to you like this and you telling your story and he says, yeah, that's not a good sign, bro. That shows, bro, he not buying a word you preaching, bro. Fat Joe, I remember he was also called out for telling a story about how he's the one who connected Bone Thugs and Harmony to Biggie and got them to do a song together. I think Bone Thugs and Harmony called out Fat Joe for capping.
I told a story on a documentary, I believe Angie Martinez is the host for with Biggie. I went in there and I talked about how I connected Bone Thugs and Harmony with Biggie Smalls to go Bone and Biggie, Bone. And I see it go viral and everybody's like, it's cap. Joe's capping again. Steve Lobel's on here, who's been Bone Thugs manager for 30 years. He's on it. Bro, Bone Thugs and Harmony was the biggest group at the time. Biggest, selling 30 million. They were tight with Tupac, so they didn't want to do the song out of respect for Tupac. But I convinced them to get in the studio with Big and do Born and Biggie, and they did it, and I'm sure they're happy that I convinced them to do that because it's a legendary song that everybody loves. Now, when I say stories like this, people think I'm capping. I'm lying. Oh, cap, this is cap. I can't make this shit up. Do you want the best stories in hip-hop or no?
We want the truest story in hip-hop, Joe. Now, Bone Thugs and Harmony version of this story was, I think Biggie protected them or Biggie did something for them, and that connected them to Biggie. They never mentioned Fat Joe's connection at all. So people are now calling out Fat Joe for this Tupac story that he's been telling for years. But it was finally corrected by Tupac's cousin in an Art of the Dialogue interview. Now, the story about Tupac that Fat Joe has been telling is how Fat Joe had Tupac scared and uncomfortable in jail for coming on air and saying this one thing.
Crash dummy. Like, what do you think about, let's go. Yeah, I don't care. You
You
know.
also was telling the truth. That's your life. That's who you were. It's not like you was up here lying like a lot of
No.
rappers
But
be.
what happened to me one time that you got to be careful because your words are powerful, and I'm really not trying to. But it's a perfect example. East Coast, West Coast. I'm really tight with Biggie Smalls. I do know Tupac Shakur, right? I know that's weird to the young kids listening, but Biggie's my man, right? Family since day one, and Tupac, I know him. We cool. But I get up here and they do it to me. Yo, what do you think about the East Coast, West Coast? Yo, I don't know, man. But if somebody talk to me, it's on and popping out here. Like, we can get it popping, this, whatever they want, this. Now, Tupac's in jail doing time up in New York. The Spanish cats hear that, and they start making them feel real uncomfortable in jail now. Right? Muta Bell could tell you the story.
I know at this moment in time, Fat Joe is public enemy number one for the FBAs, but at some point, Fat Joe was very influential in New York. Fat Joe for his community was like Pac, but Pac for his community was Pac. So Fat Joe will want us to believe that because he said that if Pac ever mentioned him is on and popping on the radio, that a bunch of Puerto Ricans in jail took that as like a dog whistle to harm Tupac and his beef with Tupac. So those Puerto Ricans in jail began to make Tupac uncomfortable and fearful for his life. And Pac was so worried about being hurt that he had to call Fat Joe and plead for his life for Fat Joe to call off the dogs. Now, do you understand who Tupac was at that particular time? Do you understand that Tupac was like literal Jesus for some black folks, thug life? Tupac being in prison and running with the blacks, I don't think that Pac is calling anybody begging for his life, asking for Fat Joe to call the Puerto Ricans off of him, bro. Right? If anything, it would have probably gotten on and cracking. It would have divided up the jail before Pac was pleading for his life. But that's what Fat Joe wants us to believe.
The Spanish cats hear that, and they start making them feel real uncomfortable in jail now. Right? Mutar Bell could tell you the story, right? So Tupac reaches out to me and says, yo, Joe, to put him on the phone. I think it was Greg Nice from Nice and Smooth, put him on the phone. He's like, yo, I got Tupac. So, bless you. He's like, I got Tupac. I'm like, yo, what's up? He was like, yo, Joe, I fuck with you. You know, my beef with them is this and this and that. He was like, you know, they're making it real uncomfortable for me in here. The Spanish dudes, it's like, you got on the radio, send a kite, you don't rock with me. So I had to send a real kite to the Spanish dudes in there and say, yo, I don't really have a problem with him. Like, don't do that. You know what I'm saying? They wound up being cool with him in there. And, you know, and so he always said to his crew and everybody, like, yo, Fat Joe, you know, he held it down. But you got to be, your words are very powerful.
Yeah.
And they could cause real situations out there without you even knowing.
That's right.
So you got to be careful.
Common sense can only go so far. My common sense would tell me that if Pac was being harassed by Puerto Ricans in jail, the blacks would have rolled for Pac even harder. Like, it's Tupac we're talking about, bruh. So my common sense tells me, Cap, but common sense only goes so far. So I'm not qualified to talk about the veracity of this story because I wasn't there. However, Tupac's cousin, who was handling all of Pac's business at the time, who talked to Pac every day on the phone when he was in jail, who visited Pac once a week when Pac was in jail, well, that cousin is calling out Fat Joe for capping.
Mind you, I was going to visit Pac every month. If Pac was having problems with anybody in prison, I would have been the first to know about it. Not only would I have been the first to know about it, Watani would, you got to know, the people who are in prisons, who run the prisons, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans who do. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of people who run the prisons in the New York State penal system are people that we know. They people that love us. They family members, man. They people, yo. You get where I'm coming from, Del Rey? Tupac wasn't in a prison where people was going to walk all over him. That wasn't going to be the situation. He was in prison with people who were strong.
Absolutely.
Tupac didn't want our people protecting him. He refused when he first got into Clinton. There were people already with care packages for him. Like strong people, like legendary, like I'm talking about legend, they all in the newspapers, dude.
Clearly, what he's saying is the most logical option of the two explanations that we heard, one from Fat Joe and one from him. Clearly, bruh. Bro, no one race runs a prison at all. You think Tupac, being a celebrity he is, being a star he is, being the revolutionary he is, you think the Puerto Ricans would have violated Tupac, marked him out, harmed him, took his manhood, do whatever to him, and the blacks would have sat down and allowed it happen as if Pac was like a runaway? That's not how that would have worked, bruh. So Fat Joe talking as if he was like sitting at the top of this totem pole on this shrine or something, and he saved Tupac's life. And if it wasn't because of him, the Puerto Ricans would have did whatever they wanted to do to Pac. Cut it out, bruh. Cut it out.
Legendary. That is telling Pac, if you got problems, let me know. I'm gonna make sure that the CEOs know blah 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 and this and that. And Pac telling them, nah, that's all right. I don't need none of you guys to help me with nothing. I'm good. I'm gonna ride this on my own. And then the officers, knowing Pac's connection with some of the strongest people in Clinton, taking him out of population and putting him in segregation so that he don't incite anything in population. So that there's no chance of anybody trying to take advantage of this guy who is being watched by some of the strongest men in prison. Does that make sense to you? That some Puerto Ricans is going to put pressure on him so that Pac can call Joe, of all people, to tell his people, you know, does that make sense? Especially
Probably ever could.
yeah, especially in Clinton. Like I was in Clinton. I used to work on Clinton Farm. So I know how that, and like I said, he's right about the Puerto Rican. They got strength in those jails and they buck wild, you know, but when it applies to them putting pressure on Tupac, I don't see that. I see that being far-fetched. I don't see that being actually accurate. Now, he may have embellished a little bit in telling that story, but I do not see Tupac being pressured enough to where he has to call Fat Joe to clear some shit up for him. Tupac could have called, look, dude, I don't want to go and get into names and shit like that, but he could have called any one of the people that I'm thinking about that could have put a stop to whatever that was going on with him, if it was going on.
No, it doesn't make sense at all. Like that's not even something that's even a reasonable explanation. I think, again, from hearing both sides, I just think it's a straight up lie. I don't even think there's a way that Fat Joe could even misinterpret this. Bro, do people forget that Pac is actually from New York? That Pac actually got family in New York? Right? That Pac got connections in the prisons? Yo, Pac's entire personality isn't even somebody who a coward, right? I feel like more so if Pac was being pressed, bro, Pac would probably super press to prove that he's not no punk. That's Pac's personality and what we've seen from Pac. Pac ain't the one to back down. Yo, there's a story, bro, that when Pac like came to Oakland, um, I think, yeah, right, there was some little like conflict. Bro, Pac went to people's blocks to check them. So there won't be no type of funny animosity there. Feel me? So nah, I don't believe Fat Joe, bro. Again, if Fat Joe, I don't know, maybe has somebody who was on the phone with him who could vouch, maybe that would change it. But even that, bro, I would have a tough time believing this, man. Y'all let me know in the comment section. Do y'all believe this? Do y'all feel like Tupac called Fat Joe begging for mercy, begging him to call the wolves off him because his life was in danger and he was uncomfortable? Let me know in the comment section. And if you're still watching, click on this video here somewhere on my screen. Somewhere here on my screen, man, to find out why Whack 100 went off and disrespected DJ Academics on his live stream earlier today, right? I'm going to see you guys in this video somewhere on my screen. Out of here, folks. Peace.